Good morning once again, distinguished guests, and for just those walking into the room, a warm welcome once again. Today is Forest and Land Use Day, here today at the UNEP Pavilion. We've heard in the earlier presentation that the financing flows for nature is at a negative by $7 trillion per year. So that's a whooping amount of $7 trillion, and this is likely an underestimate. But this gap also provides us with an opportunity to explore a myriad of solutions. And it is now my pleasure to introduce the next session titled Everything, Everywhere, All at Once, Supercharging Forest Solutions to the Climate Crisis, moderated by Mr. Gabriel Labate, Head of the Climate Mitigation Unit at UNEP. Gabriel, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'll be the moderator of the event. Welcome to UNEP, your house. And representing about 80 to 90% of the global plant biomass and much of the Earth's terrestrial biodiversity, forests play a key role in both mitigation and adaptation. And they also provide livelihoods, income, food to indigenous communities and local communities. However, so far, humans have removed about half of forest ecosystem worldwide. This is an immense loss to those that live in them. It is an immense loss to the climate and the global community as a whole. In terms of emission reductions, every year, the loss of forests equal about the 27 countries combined of the European Union. We are running out of time, and that's why the title of this event is Everything, Everywhere, All at Once approach. In this dialogue today, we will hear from representatives from Brazil, from Peru, Indonesia, Republic of Korea, Cameroon, and the IC-VCM. We will discuss a set of tools, strategies, and actions to address the challenge of reaching net zero deforestation by 2030. And with that, we will show you a trailer ready to go.
Time is running out. Our world, our very existence is under threat. Entire cities and countries are being submerged by rising seas. Wildfires are devouring forests and communities, and monstrous storms are destroying everything in their path. These aren't distant nightmares, but our present harsh reality. We've made some progress adapting and building new technology to reduce the impact of climate change. But the root causes are the very foundation of our everyday life. Transportation, energy, agriculture, raw materials. These things sustain us, but if we remain careless in our consumption, they have the potential to destroy us. Look at our forests. They provide abundant resources, and yet we continue to destroy them, turning healthy forests into barren deserts. What if we start to see forests as more than just a source of economic necessities? What if we embrace them as one of our biggest tools against climate change? What if we invest in our forests so they can purify the air we breathe, regulate the water we drink, absorb and store CO2, prevent floods and erosions, provide habitat for wildlife, balance ecosystems? Saving forests and using them to curb climate change is within reach, but we need to be doing everything everywhere all at once. Imagine a future with no forests, where cities and local communities are concrete and barren. Our lives, our livelihoods, our future is all at risk. Now imagine another future, where forests are valued and protected, where people live in harmony with nature, and efforts to save them are rewarded with benefits shared by all. Which future do you want? Without forests, there is no future. We are out of time.
And with this opening, I would like to invite Ms. Inger Andersen. She is the Executive Director of the United Nations Environment Programme and is in this event in representation of the UNRED program, which is the biggest interagency program and is composed by the UN Development Programme, FAO, and UNEP.
Hello and good morning. It's a pleasure to see so many people here and such a distinguished panel. Thank you, and thank you, Gabrielle, for convening this on behalf of UNRED, and you're very welcome to the UNEP Pavilion, everyone. Look, we just saw this film here, and we heard from Gabrielle that we are stuck in a loop of broken promises. The data speaks very loudly. The deforestation rates are up by 4%, accompanied by a 6% increase in gross emissions from deforestation compared to the previous year. And projections from our 2023 emissions gap report tells us that we are likely to see a 3% increase in greenhouse gas emissions by 2030, not decrease. And we know that if we want to hit 1.5 degrees, we need to see a 42% decrease by 2030. So, ladies and gentlemen, friends, partners, we're going in the wrong direction. And as temperatures soar, climate ambitions remain insufficient. We've seen some good progress here, but not enough. And so I really want to say that fully implementing the NDCs under the Paris Agreement, stretching for the next round of NDCs that come up in 2025 is absolutely critical. The consequences are dire if we, as we sort of get closer to possible tipping points, because just imagine for a moment the horror if the Amazon, this icon of biodiversity, which is now in some places teetering on the edge of becoming savanna, that's not the road we want to journey, obviously. So this is a global crisis, a tipping point that recent scientific studies have highlighted, and if we hit this tipping point, then obviously a worst-case scenario would be real. And it would endanger the equilibrium of the world as we know it, weather patterns as we know it, and rainfall, harvests, etc., as we know them. So the climate goals are literally everywhere, but at the end they are anchored in our forests. And let's not forget the untapped element of nature-based solutions, especially, obviously, forests. So forests alone can contribute 4 gigatons of emissions reductions. So the time for forest commitments without quantifiable actions has to end. We know that 80% of the NDCs include forest and land use. Let's make sure that they're quantifiable. Statements are easy. Can we measure them, please? The top 20 deforestation emitting countries lack solid plans with clear dimensions of measurabilities. There is ambition there, which we celebrate, but let's help them develop those quantifiable targets to avoid a repetition of unfulfilled promises. We have a chance right now to get this right. We need to see funding increase for nature-based solutions and services, and we have to undo the trillions of negative finance that impact on forests. We need to see a much better price on carbon that we get by tightening and having transparency in the market and good monitoring and verification, and I think we have some from that side also on our panel here. Carbon markets, both the voluntary as well as the compliance market, could provide real scale and agility to finance forest conservation. And the truth is, and you will hear this today, that it is entirely possible. Nature is very, very forgiving. It forgives us our trespasses much more than we know, because if you just give nature a little break, it bounces right back. It's not magic. It's just nature. But if you push it beyond its sustainable ability to regenerate when it has become completely barren, then it needs real restoration. But if it's still standing forest, curtail grazing, curtail deforestation, and it will come back. So this is not hopeless. And that's why we are here, but we are calling for everything, everywhere, all at once. Let's get it done. Thank you very much for coming. And I have to apologize because I have to run, but I thank these brilliant people for being present. It's wonderful to see you again, Madam Minister, and it's wonderful to see this distinguished panel here. Thank you very, very much indeed. Thank you.
And our next speaker is Mr. Daniel Ortega. Daniel is a person with a very long trajectory in policy making and forestry issues. He has been Minister of Environment of Ecuador. He holds now the position of the Director of Forest Carbon and Climate Program at Michigan State University. He is also the co-chair of the expert panel at the Integrity Council for the Voluntary Carbon Market. So Daniel, thanks for being with us. Daniel, we started this event talking about a toolbox and using everything we have at hand. Coming from the IC-VCM, from the Integrity Council, tell us the question of, I think, of the decade. Is it possible to achieve high integrity in carbon markets? And what are some specific principles, strategies, and actions that should countries and stakeholders undertake to ensure we get there? The floor is yours.
Thank you very much for that kind introduction, and I apologize that I have to go first, the ministers. It's just I have to run to another event, but please forgive me. And I'm very humble for your kind introduction, Gabriel. When you hear what I have been working in the last few years and you see my face, it doesn't match, right? I know, I saw your faces. But I try to believe that as Gabriel, we are committed to deliver for forests, in particular for forest people and forest countries. Let me add to what Inger indicated. So on top of that unfulfilled promise, we are also in developing countries, we are facing severe levels of debt. So listening yesterday at the panels, we were with Ghana, they indicated that they have expended about $200 million of fiscal resources to put together the RED Plus action. And they just received $15 million in payments. So when we think about the cost that this represents to really take action from the government side to protect the forest, it's not an easy task. We know that we have that responsibility. We have the capacity at the jurisdictional level to enforce the policy arrangement and to control illegal logging, but it has a cost. So when we talk about voluntary carbon markets, we believe that it is one of the available tools that can really mobilize finance at a scale without compromising additional levels of debt. No más deuda, ministra. Hay pocas herramientas. I think there are so few tools that can actually mobilize finance without compromising additional debt. However, we need to keep two things in mind. First, the voluntary carbon market should not replace real decarbonization efforts by companies, by governments, and by society. We are perhaps one complementary tool that is ready available to deploy this finance, but we were lacking credibility. There were a lot of issues of trust. There were technical issues as well with respect to forests on additionality and permanence. But I think we are reaching to a turning point. Not everything has been resolved, but I think we are in the right track. And let me speak a little bit about the IC-VCM, the nature of it and its role. We are an independent body of private actors that is trying to put together the best practice available in the current market infrastructure, improve what is needed for the private sector. So this is, let's say, soft regulation. There has been other examples of soft regulation coming into real practice of the law, like the Task Force on Climate and Risk Disclosure. And we are very fortunate at this point of time that our rule book that was recently released in June has been recognized by the UK government and is used as reference during the public consultation. And also the United States Commission on Future Exchange has also recognized that there is some value on this rule book. And this makes us very humble. Let me speak why some jurisdictions are reflecting on the CCPs perhaps as a source of inspiration to develop their own national strategies to access carbon markets, but do it with high integrity. Is that we put together 3 major areas that were requiring additional support. One has to do, as you may recall, what the Integrity Council does is that we provide guidance to carbon crediting programs, right? That's our subject of, let's say, regulation. We will be assessing carbon crediting programs where they align to the core carbon principles, which is a set of principles that we have published. And we will also be scrutinizing credit categories, and that is different types, forest, renewable energy, and the others, but we will be looking very closely to the methodologies that have been put forward by carbon crediting programs. Not because we don't trust them, no. We want to provide the public the information they need to trust them and to ensure that carbon crediting programs and everybody in the ecosystem is delivered on high integrity. So these 3 major areas that the core carbon principles entail have to do first with governance, how decisions are made in the carbon crediting programs, where they are managing conflict of interest, whether there is transparency in the management of registry and disclosure of information so that anybody in the world can access to every single project documentation that is there, the tools that were used to calculate emissions, and so far. The second area is emissions impact. So we have a set of rules that have to do with additionality. For those of you that are not quite familiar with the voluntary carbon market, this instrument is a new financial asset, right? That in addition to mobilize private finance, it has a particular characteristic that it only mobilizes finance to projects that otherwise would not have occurred, right? Voluntary carbon market is not for anyone that can do action and does not do it. This is an incentive for those projects that otherwise would not be feasible, like forest protection, like establishing a renewable energy in some countries. So we have ensured that there are provisions for additionality, for permanence, for robust quantification, and so on. But lastly, and not least, we have introduced a set of requirements that addresses safeguards and sustainable development measurement and impact. With this, I address Gabriel's questions. We believe, and we are seeing some jurisdictions looking at this framework as a source of inspiration to develop their own national crediting programs, which will ensure interoperability, full fungibility, and flows to scale. Thank you.
We are honored to have with us Ms. Albina Ruiz. She is the Minister of Environment of Peru. She will address the audience in Spanish, and I will do my best to translate into English. So first I'll ask the question in English, then the Minister will respond. We will soon be halfway through 2030. 2030 is the moment in which the global community twice, not just one, twice, committed to achieve net zero deforestation. Peru is a key country in this process. It holds a vast array of forests. And the question to Minister Ruiz will be the contribution of Peru towards achieving this goal. What is that Peru can show us, lead us in getting to 2030 and achieve net zero deforestation?
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm sorry, but I am speaking Spanish because it's better for my heart. En Perú, a lo largo de los años, Perú en realidad tiene baja deforestación. No es uno de los que aporta deforestando. Pero sí es importante señalar que nosotros estamos revisando hoy en día nuestra metodología. Cuando llegamos a la gestión, encontramos que se paga, el mercado voluntario paga aquel que está deforestando y deja de deforestar. Pero ¿qué pasa con aquellas comunidades, sobre todo nuestras comunidades indígenas, que están conservando de siempre y ellos no reciben nada? O sea, eso no puede suceder. Yo quiero hacer un llamado a PENUMA también que nos acompañe en esta propuesta. En realidad, quienes deberían recibir más dinero no son aquellos que están deforestando y dejan de deforestar, sino aquellos que están conservando ancestralmente, que son nuestras comunidades nativas y que no están recibiendo. Entonces nosotros desde Perú estamos revisando hoy nuestra metodología y queremos hacer una propuesta mundial para que esto sea así. Tengo que parar, ¿no?
Peru has a low deforestation rate, even though Peru is revising the methodology to estimate the loss of forests. And a key point is that we need to support, we need to help those that are actually conserving and defending these forests. And a key group is indigenous peoples and local communities. The minister was wondering, is it fair that money should flow to those that are actually cutting the forest, deforesting, instead of actually redirecting these resources to support those that actually are defending them? And if I could add, sometimes at the cost of their own lives.
Por ello, nuestra metodología lo venimos trabajando directamente con ellos. Perú es el único país que tiene una plataforma de comunidades nativas que trabajan con nosotros todas nuestras propuestas que traemos a la COP y que llevamos cada año. Y justamente en esta escucha que hacemos es que ellos nos piden qué pasa con nosotros, porque son las comunidades nativas sobre todo que en defensa de sus bosques incluso están siendo muchos de ellos asesinados, porque las actividades ilegales están detrás de nuestros bosques. No solamente hay tala de bosques, hay minería ilegal, hay narcotráfico y todo esto afecta al bosque. ¿Y a quiénes son los más afectados? Son las comunidades nativas. Y muchas veces están peleando solos. Necesitan del gobierno, pero también necesitan de recursos. Y Perú este año está trayendo una propuesta a la COP28 y es la creación de un fondo climático para mujeres indígenas, porque las mujeres son las más vulnerables. O sea, ya de por sí el cambio climático afecta más a la mujer, pero si esta mujer es rural y encima es nativa, le afecta muchísimo más todavía. Entonces necesitamos fondos en realidad que vayan a cubrir esas necesidades, a visibilizarlas, pero también para que ellas sean capaces de decidir qué hacer con esos fondos y cómo generar mejor desarrollo en sus comunidades.
And that is why Peru is working on this revised methodology together with indigenous people and local communities. And these are the same communities asking us, what happens with us? Those that are defending the territory at the cost of loss of life, facing illegal mining, facing illegal drug trafficking. Peru is coming to COP with a proposal to establish a fund for women that are indigenous people and women in local communities. It is already difficult in so many parts of the world if you are a woman, if on top of that you come from an indigenous people community or a local community deep in the forest, it's even more difficult for you.
Finalmente, nosotros tenemos el Registro Nacional de Mitigación, que ahora estamos trabajando también de manera conjunta con las comunidades, con las propias empresas y también con la academia, la anidación, porque es importante trabajar en ello. Muchos nos dicen, ¿cuándo sacan los informes? Pues porque justamente lo que queremos es visibilizar este trabajo que hacen las comunidades. Es que estamos ahora en esta revisión y hemos pedido también a las certificadoras internacionales que hagan la modificación de sus metodologías, porque estas metodologías internacionales que venden el carbono también solamente están pensando en pagar a aquel que se detiene en la deforestación, más no al que está conservando permanentemente, y creo que sí se tienen que hacer esos cambios. Nosotros desde Perú pedimos esos cambios, que se hagan porque son necesarios realmente, y es la única manera de seguir manteniendo el bosque en pie. Nosotros tenemos otra premisa. Nosotros decimos que la única manera de mantener el bosque en pie es si tenemos cadenas de valor productivas sostenibles. O sea, hacemos uso de los recursos del bosque, pero de manera sostenible. Y otra vez allí necesitamos apoyo porque podemos mejorar, poner en valor los productos, pero si no garantizamos el mercado, nada hacemos. Podemos mejorar la productividad, podemos agregarle valor, pero tenemos que cerrar el ciclo con el mercado. Y ahí nuevamente necesitamos recursos, necesitamos de la sabiduría de todas las organizaciones internacionales que nos ayuden. Perú está abierto a seguir trabajando juntos y queremos levantar esta voz, por favor, de que miremos más hacia nuestras comunidades ancestrales. Muchas gracias.
The country is also working on having a national registry on mitigation. This registry is also being geared to accommodate issues of nesting, that is the compatibility between actions happening at the ground and those happening at higher levels. Peru is also asking standards in the voluntary carbon market to revise the methodologies and make sure that indigenous people and local communities get the reward and the help they need. But apart from that, it's also important to strengthen the value chains. Those are the change of commerce and trade that actually will make forests more valuable when they're alive instead of dead. There is a need of support for that. Peru is welcoming the support that the international community can provide in protecting forests, in protecting indigenous communities, local populations, and will warmly welcome you if you can support along this journey. Ministry, thank you very much. It has been a pleasure to have you here. Our next speaker is Mr. Raoni Rajão. He's from Brazil. He's the director of the Control Office, the Office of Control for Deforestation. He's also the person responsible for REDD+ activities in the country. Thank you very much, Raoni, for being with us. Brazil will be the host of COP30 in Belém. It will find us half the way through 2030. Brazil has achieved an incredible results in a very, very short time, decreasing deforestation in the Amazon. Now that will need to be maintained and actually transform into an economy that will value the forest standing instead of felled. And since we are in a panel on hosted by UN Red, the question to you is that how Brazil sees the potential of Red Plus payments to finance this transition towards a bioeconomy in Brazil. Over to you.
So good morning. Thanks very much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here. So Brazil has been working very hard since January in this new administration to revert the tendency of growing deforestation that we have had. And indeed, we had already some very important results under the leadership of Minister Marina Silva and Secretary André Lima, that's here with us. We managed to reduce deforestation by 50% from January to November compared to the same period of last year in the Amazon. So that's indeed possible to reduce deforestation drastically, but it comes at a cost. And in order to finance that, we need resources. And it's important to consider the multiple ways in which you can bring resources into the country. Specifically in relation to RED, as you know, there are market approaches and on-market approaches. Of course, we want to continue and expand into no-market approaches, especially in relation to donations to the Amazon Fund. We have managed to attract additional donors such as the United Kingdom, Denmark, the EU, Germany also made additional pledges, and the United States also made additional pledges. So we are indeed strengthening that side, and that's very important to highlight that. Also because, and I would like to emphasize this, voluntary markets, companies helping to reduce emissions is no substitute for climate finance. Countries, developed countries, they have to pay their share, and there is no way in which the private sector should replace that role. And that's why it's very important to keep strengthening no-market approaches and climate finance. However, when it comes to market approaches, then you have many different tools at hand. You have those that generate credits or generate results, mitigation results, which are compatible, which are part of the convention. And it's important to highlight that it only happens when you have a reduction of emissions or you have carbon sequestration. Avoided emissions, so when you have a lot of forest, no risk, no deforestation, it's not basically possible to generate carbon credits from there according to the convention. And I understand the need of local communities, especially those that do not pose risk, especially those that are concerned, and especially indigenous communities that deserve resources to protect their areas, but we should not torture methods to scream credits, because that's not leading to high integrity carbon markets, that's not leading to results which are reflected at the atmosphere. That's why Brazil is proposing a new mechanism, so Forest Forever, that pays by hectare, and it has nothing to do with carbon. It pays for the ecosystem services provided by the forest, and it's basically an endowment fund. So countries are going to donate to that, and then have return, they have interest paid back, and by reinvesting that money at a high interest rate, that's going to feed into the fund and enable a continuous amount of money coming to the fund and paying for the local communities, even those that do not have risk, even those that could not generate carbon credits. Because if you look, for instance, in the case of Brazil, only 2% of deforestation in the Amazon takes place inside indigenous lands. And of course, they deserve much more than 2% of the revenues from carbon credits. And that comes to my second point. One thing is the generation of carbon credit. The other one is the distribution of the benefit from carbon credits. For instance, we just approved within the Amazon Fund, remembering that's a fund that receives money based on reductions, it's not avoidance, it's on reductions. And we have decided that even though only 2% of the results are linked to deforestation in indigenous land, we are approving a project that is above 5% of the remaining credit, of the remaining money inside the Amazon Fund, could be even bigger. And that's why we believe that we should basically take the result that quite often comes from fighting deforestation against illegal activities. And of course, the illegal perpetrators should not be the ones earning the credits. It should be something which are based on a national accountability, as it is in the convention, and then distributed for those in need, distributed for those that actually deserve it. And finally, in order to achieve high integrity carbon market, we might have, for instance, some projects that see themselves and would like to be high integrity carbon projects. And for that, then we need to align that with the national strategy for REDD+. So because even though you might have some private companies that verify certain types of activities as REDD+, it's not real REDD+, because real REDD+ is what under the convention, and there are some activities called REDD+ that are not under the convention. And also we have a problem of baseline compatibility. So if a project which might happen based and aligned with the national REDD+, it's aligned with the convention. So I think it's important to include them in the national accountability to take out of the amount that a country might receive or sell as carbon credits for the voluntary market, might even receive as donations. Because in the end of the day, the results happen only once on the ground, so we have to account for them. But it's important to really separate what are the projects that are actually aligned with the national strategy, and also the projects that are indeed real REDD+, not those that only use REDD+ as a marketing approach, because of course there is a difference there. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Raoni. And your intervention really is at the core of this event in terms of everything, everywhere, all at once. We hope that carbon markets will contribute, but we also hope that the fund proposal by Brazil will actually be hopefully bigger than that. Now it is my honor to present Dr. Haruni Krisnawati. She's a special advisor to the Minister of Environment. She is coming here in representation of Mr. Dohong, the Vice Minister for Environment and Forestry in Indonesia, who he couldn't attend due to other commitments. I'd like to switch now a bit and go into more of a technical issue, which is becoming key, not only to put in place mechanisms like carbon markets, but it will also be very, very, very important for the Brazilian proposal for this Global Tropical Fund. Dr. Krisnawati, Indonesia has been at the forefront of setting up strong registries. And these are key to deal with issues of double counting, being able to nest projects, as Raoni was indicating us. Could you share with us the advances of the Indonesian registry and its contribution to having proper accounting?
Thank you, Gabriel. Thanks for inviting us, Indonesia, for these sessions. And good morning, colleagues. In response to your question regarding the Indonesian climate registry system, first allow us to reiterate first regarding our Indonesia commitment that we continue its enhancing the commitment to reducing greenhouse gas emission, which is in accordance with its national commitment to the global climate change. And this commitment has been reflected in our involving nationally determined contributions, which where the emission reduction target has been increased and progressively increased, leveraging the both national capability and also international support. Recognizing the importance of achieving the NDC target, Indonesia has enacted the Presidential Regulation number 98 of 2021 concerning the implementations of carbon pricing to achieve the NDC target and also the control over the GHG emission within the national development. This regulation mandates that every business, every entities, every institution engaged in the climate change mitigation and or adaptation must register this initiative and action into a national climate registry system, which is efficient as a comprehensive data repository GHG emission and also climate resilience, including the resource of funding, technology transfer, and capacity building, which is a pivotal step toward tracking progress, the target of NDC. For the successful implementation of the one data system of GHG emissions and climate resilience, of course, a collaborative approach among various stakeholders across Indonesia has been implemented, and such partnership requires a strong commitment, harmonized interaction between stakeholders for each ministry, for each stakeholders. And this will ensure the sustainability and the availability of comprehensive data at national and subnational level. And of course, in terms of setting up the reliable reference for both national and international reporting requirements and facilitating the effective tracking of the progress toward the NDC targets. And how the strategy that Indonesia has been taking in terms of complexity of monitoring, reporting, and verifying the actions, we have been implemented through the centralized data repository, transparency and accessibility, standardized method for reporting, monitoring and reporting, of course, engaging with stakeholders, regular updates and review, capacity building and technical support, and of course, alignment with the international standard, which are all important in integrating the national efforts into the global climate action framework. And for each, actually, for example, for centralized data repository, the system serves as a centralized platform where a climate-related data and actions are recorded, and they will ensure that data information is consistently collected and stored to track the progress and identify areas that need more attention. And in terms of transparency and accessibility, making the data accessible for the public and international body, how the transparency is not only build trust in the system, but also allow the verification and support, ensuring that the reporting action are indeed being implemented. And we also develop the standardized methods for reporting. They also include in our registry system by establishing the method for reporting climate actions and their impacts. The system will ensure the consistency and comparability of data across different sectors and regions. And as we mentioned before, involving the stakeholders across the ministry, across the stakeholder in Indonesia is also very, very important to maintain the sustainability and also the workflow from the national climate registry system. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Krisnawati. A key activity in UN-RED is knowledge sharing and South-South cooperation. And I'm sure that there is much to learn from the Indonesian experience in setting up and running a registry. Now, it is with great pleasure to turn to our next speaker, Ms. Cecile Ndjebet. She is a distinguished advocate in the fields of women, land tenure, and communities' rights. She is also a UNEP champion of the Earth 2022, and with a long experience in issues of participation of local communities in the protection of forests. Cecile, In UNRED, we invest significant time on social and environmental safeguards, making sure that the protection and conservation of forests is carried out with full respect of people that live in them. And the question to you is, if you could share with us examples in which the upholding of these safeguards have actually worked and made a difference to the people that inhabit these forests. And this is actually two questions into one. What is that we should improve? Over to you.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be part of this. And I would like to also add that I'm a forest champion, Raoni Matai forest champion, and I'm very happy to meet Mr. Director General of the Korean Forest Service, who handed me my award last year in Seoul, North Korea. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you for the question. I think I would like to start by commenting the event and the title is there. Everything, everywhere, at once. This is extremely significant and relevant to the situation we are living in today. And let me come back to the safeguard to say that, yes, the safeguard are extremely important, and thanks to Brazil for the example, it's very exciting. I think that we need to make sure, and I'm happy, even in this panel, everybody is recognizing the key role indigenous people and local communities are playing to sustain our forests and to restore our forests. And that's what we have been struggling to achieving for decades now. And yes, the safeguard are something very useful, and it's working. In Cameroon, for example, when we started the REDD+ process in 2007, we were lucky that we had this safeguard, and that made our government understand that they need to include us in everything. And today I'm happy that it's not yet what we are looking for, but at least we have 35 to 40% of IPs and women and youth represented in decision-making structure at all levels in our country. And it's not only Cameroon, we have also worked in the DRC, we have worked in Central African Republic, in Cote d'Ivoire, in Togo, in Burkina Faso. And I think that our network is in 20 countries. The idea is to cover the 20 countries, and more are still to come. But maybe it's also important to share is about the challenges, and one of them is exactly what you have asked about tenure rights. Because today, even if we are really doing that, some people like women are still lacking the right to land and the right to forest. So the effort we are making in restoring forest is still limited because of lack of tenure right. I think we still have to work on that. We have pushed for regulation for law. In some countries, we have some improvement. For example, with the community forestry scheme that give more room to women to also improve their tenure rights. So I think these are schemes that we have to continue to support and make sure that they are really in all those countries where we are working. The second challenge is resources, access to funding. Let me say, the Director General is there. In Seoul last year, we took the solemn engagement commitment to planting 20 million trees. And we have that concept note. Until today, Director General, we have not been able to mobilize funding to make that happen. So this is really an issue. We have seen in the first video how forests are important. And, you know, I'm coming from Antarctica. I've spent 21 days that I left Antarctica to here. And the situation we are living in forest is also in forest area is impacting the Antarctica, which is now also in danger because of the climate change. If we don't take concrete actions, if we don't really put resources where the resources need to be, we will continue to come to COP and to speak, nothing will happen. The forest and the Antarctica will continue to disappear, and the world will continue to be in great danger, because today we are in great danger. We don't need words, we don't need to talk, we need actions. And women on the ground and the youth have initiatives that have proven that it works. Please put resources into that so that we upscale what we are doing and the impact will be seen. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Cecile, for these powerful words. And now it's an honor to have Dr. Eugene Park. He is the Director General of the Korean Forestry Service, and Korea is also a very generous donor of the UN RED program and an advocate for forest conservation and sustainable use. And Dr. Park, please, if you could give us your words, and with that we will close the event.
Okay, thank you. Actually, my role is for the closing remarks, but I'd like to say some words before my closing. Actually, distinguished speakers and participants, it's my honor to be part of this great event, and a very good morning. First of all, I'd like to express my sincere appreciation to the participants and distinguished speakers. Right now, we have heard from the minister and distinguished speakers about the importance of forest. So everybody agree the forest is important. So forest can play a very important role to tackle the climate crisis and bring us, our nature back to our better lives and our future generations. But however, the forest is under threat. Everybody says same things. So even I just recalled some statistics. Between 2015 to 2020, we lost 10 million forests every year. So this not only reduces forest itself, but also increases the vulnerability of forest-dependent community and ecosystems. Therefore, we need to act urgently and collectively to promote and restore our forest. So we need to implement the commitment made to reach the global goals, such as 1.5 Celsius degrees, and we have many targets and many the commitment. But right before the Cecile already mentioned, we need actions. So we have to foster the innovation and collaborate actions across the sectors and stakeholders to share the best practices and to the lessons learned from the very successful stories. So for example, I'd like to share some Korea's experience. Korea started RED+ project with some Mekong Basin partners, namely Cambodia, Laos, PDR, and Myanmar since absolutely the Indonesia, since 2015. So this is the very small scale pilot project, but we are very successful to scale up those projects. So the day before yesterday, we made a new MOU on the subnational jurisdictional level of RED+ project with our partner, the Lao PDR. So, and also the technology is very important in terms of the monitoring and reporting and verification. So we will launch our own forest satellite in 2 years, and then we will share the image with our partner countries. So it is very important opportunity to improve our actions. So also I think that together we can supercharge the forest solution to the climate crisis and secure a more sustainable, resilient, and a prosperous future for all of us. In this journey, I think already my fellow speakers emphasized the women's and local communities, indigenous people. Their role is very important, so we have to listen to them. I'd like to recall that sometimes people say stakeholders, but some other expert told me they are not stakeholders, they are right holders. So we have to discuss with them. We have to listen to them. So thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Dr. Park, for being with us. Again, we recognize the support that Korea is providing to the UN RED program. We are grateful for that. And then it's time to wrap up the event. I would like to thank again to these distinguished panelists. Thank you, Dr. Krisnawati. Thank you, Cecile. Thank you, Raoni. And thank you all for being with us.
The key, carbon calamity, standing on the brink of a catastrophe. Do it green or do it cheap, offset and plant them trees, removal and store it deep. Invest in new machines, either way, carbon removal is the key.
Yo, let's talk about nature-based, you know what scale's the best. No need to reinvent, just take every piece of land we can get. Plant trees and agricultural techniques and respect. It's naturally the next step while developing climate tech.
Hold up, I think I smell some manure in your garden. You think we can just dig a permanent carbon? Burn it as fossil fuels in our cars and then what? Fix it with field farming, my friend, that's pure jargon.
It's a huge market. Carbon credits protect trees. Imagine how effective those market mechanisms can be.
Effective? That's facetious, unprovable past pieces. Even the Amazon captures less carbon than it releases. You're too focused on cheapness, obsessing whether it scales. Keep the minnows in your bucket. Me, I'm hunting whales.
I really hope that fails. Nature is priority.
Dummy, I mean hunting whales metaphorically. The goal is removal is permanent, not a tourniquet. Removal is durable, so carbon can't burn again, and credits ready for anyone that's ready to purchase them.
Carbon calamity, standing on the brink of a catastrophe.
Do it green and do it cheap, offset and plant the trees, removal and store it deep. Invest in new machines, either way, carbon removal is the key.
Great if we could sit down and hear more about,